The hostess's sympathetic smile told me everything before she even spoke. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Campbell. There's no reservation under your name, and the party you're asking about specifically requested that we not seat anyone else with them tonight." Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. I stood frozen in the elegant entryway of Evergreen Heights, my dark blue dress suddenly feeling too tight around my chest. This had to be a mistake. Ryan had texted me the details himself. 7:30 p.m., family dinner, important announcement. Could you check again? Campbell. My husband Ryan should have included me in the reservation. The hostess glanced down at her tablet, scrolling through the evening's bookings with perfectly manicured nails. "I see a reservation for Campbell, party of 5, but—" She hesitated, lowering her voice. "There's a note here that says no. Additional guests are to be seated with them, regardless of who asks." My cheeks burned as I noticed other diners glancing my way. Through the restaurant's ambient lighting, I could see them, the Campbell family, already seated at their usual corner table by the windows overlooking Portland's glittering skyline. Ryan, his sister Vanessa, their parents Diana and Gregory, and Ryan's brother Mark. 5 people, a complete family unit, with no place for me. Ellie? What a surprise. I turned to find Vanessa standing behind me, her glass of wine half empty. Her designer dress probably cost more than my monthly car payment, and her expression held that familiar mixture of false concern and barely concealed satisfaction. "Vanessa," I managed to keep my voice steady. "There seems to be some confusion about tonight's dinner." "Oh?" She tilted her head, taking a sip of her wine. "No confusion, it's a family dinner." "I am family," I said, trying to ignore the growing knot in my stomach. "Ryan specifically told me—" "Did he?" Vanessa's eyebrows rose. "That's strange. Ryan was quite clear when we planned this that it would be just us Campbells tonight." She leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "We have important matters to discuss, Ellie. Family matters." Before I could respond, I caught sight of Ryan across the restaurant. Our eyes met, and for one terrible moment, I saw it. Guilt, flashing across his face before he quickly looked away, pretending he hadn't seen me at all. 6 years of marriage, and he couldn't even look me in the eye. "Vanessa, what's going on?" She sighed, as if dealing with a particularly dense child. "Look, this isn't personal. Well, actually, it is. Ryan has something he wants to share with us first before." She gestured vaguely at me. All the messiness. Messiness? The word hung between us, heavy with implication. "Don't make a scene, Ellie," Vanessa said, glancing around at the other patrons. "It's not becoming. Why don't you just go home and wait for Ryan to call you? I'm sure he'll explain everything later." Something in her tone, the barely concealed triumph, made everything click into place. The late nights at the office, the sudden business trips, the way Ryan had been sleeping in the guest room for the past 3 weeks, claiming he didn't want to disturb me with his insomnia. "He's going to announce that he's leaving me," I said, the words falling from my lips before I could stop them. "That's what this dinner is about, isn't it?" Vanessa's smile faltered just enough to confirm my suspicion. "It would really be better if you weren't here, Ellie." "Better for whom?" My voice was surprisingly calm, even as I felt my world tilting on its axis. "For everyone," she said, gesturing toward the door. "The car service can take you home." "You arranged a car service to remove me?" The humiliation burned hotter now, spreading across my chest and up my neck. "Be reasonable, Ellie. This is a delicate situation." I looked past her to the Campbell family table. Diana was watching us now, her eyes narrowed. Gregory was absorbed in the wine list. Mark was typing something on his phone. And Ryan was studiously avoiding looking in our direction at all, as if the pattern on his napkin required his complete attention. "Excuse me." A deep voice interrupted us. "Is there a problem here?" I turned to find a tall man in an impeccable suit looking between us with concern. His name tag identified him as Julian Werner, the restaurant manager. "No problem," Vanessa said quickly. "Mrs. Campbell was just leaving." "Actually," I said, surprising myself with how steady my voice remained, "I was hoping to speak with Jasmine. Is she in tonight?" Both Julian and Vanessa looked startled by this request. "Jasmine Rivera? The owner?" Julian asked. I nodded. "You know Jasmine?" Vanessa's voice held a note of disbelief. Before I could answer, Julian's professional demeanor shifted subtly. "Ms. Rivera is in her office. May I tell her who's asking for her?" "Ellie Matthews. She'll know who I am." Vanessa's face tightened at my use of my maiden name. Julian nodded and stepped away, leaving us in uncomfortable silence. "What are you doing?" Vanessa hissed. "You can't just name-drop your way into Ellie." A warm, delighted voice called out. "Dios mío, it's been too long." Jasmine Rivera appeared, resplendent in a crimson dress that complemented her dark curls. She embraced me tightly before holding me at arm's length to look me over. "You look stunning. Why didn't you tell me you were coming tonight?" "It was meant to be a surprise," I said, forcing a smile. "But it seems I'm the one who got surprised instead." Jasmine's gaze flicked to Vanessa, then back to me, her expression shifting to one of understanding. "I see. Well, any friend of mine is always welcome at Evergreen Heights." She linked her arm through mine, turning to Vanessa with a polite but cool smile. "You must be Ryan's sister. I've heard so much about you." Vanessa's mouth opened and closed soundlessly, like a fish out of water. Yes, Vanessa Campbell." "Pleasure," Jasmine said dismissively before turning her attention back to me. "Will you be joining us for dinner, or shall we catch up over drinks in my private dining room?" I could feel Vanessa's eyes boring into my back as Jasmine led me away, but I didn't care. The looks on the Campbell family faces as we passed their table, shock, confusion, and in Ryan's case, something approaching fear, were worth the humiliation I'd endured moments earlier. "Jasmine," I murmured once we were out of earshot, "I can't thank you enough." She squeezed my arm gently. "No thanks needed. Though you will have to fill me in on what exactly is happening. That woman looked like she was trying to vaporize you with her eyes." "It's a long story," I said as she led me through a discreet door into a beautifully appointed private dining room. "Those are the best kind," Jasmine said, gesturing for me to sit. "And it looks like we have all evening." I met Ryan Campbell 6 years ago at a tech conference in Seattle. I was presenting my software development work on real estate analytics, code I'd written in my spare time while working as a junior developer at a small startup. He approached me afterward, charming and enthusiastic, claiming my presentation had blown his mind. What he didn't mention until our third date was that his family owned Campbell Realty Group, one of the largest real estate development firms in the Pacific Northwest. By then, I was already falling for him. His quick mind, his easy laugh, his apparent lack of pretension despite his family's wealth. When he proposed 8 months later, I was over the moon. The wedding was elaborate, planned almost entirely by his mother Diana, who made it clear from our first meeting that the Campbell name came with certain expectations. I tried to embrace their world, to adapt to their country club memberships, and charity galas and summer homes. But no matter how I tried, I never quite fit. My parents, both retired school teachers, were seated at the far end of the reception hall at our wedding. My suggestion that we donate to education nonprofits instead of the Campbell family's preferred arts foundation was politely but firmly rejected. My coding career was referred to as my little computer hobby by Diana, despite the fact that I'd been promoted 3 times in 2 years. Ryan always seemed caught in the middle, unwilling to directly challenge his family but promising me in private that things would change, that they just needed time to see me as he did. Then came the opportunity that would change everything. Campbell Realty's ancient property management systems were failing, costing them clients and money. Ryan mentioned it offhandedly over dinner one night, lamenting that the quotes for new software were astronomical. I could build something, I offered. A custom system, tailored specifically to your company's needs. He laughed at first, thinking I was joking. Babe, we're talking enterprise-level software here. I know, I replied calmly. That's what I do, Ryan. That's my actual career. It took some convincing, but eventually he brought the idea to his father. Gregory Campbell was skeptical, but willing to let me try. Mostly, I suspected, because he thought it would keep me occupied and out of the way of Campbell family matters. For 6 months, I worked evenings and weekends, building a comprehensive property management platform from scratch. The day we implemented it across the company's entire portfolio, their efficiency increased by 43%. Within 3 months, they'd added 15 new properties to their management division. By the end of the year, my software had saved them over $2 million and generated another $3 million in new business. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Gregory was impressed enough to offer me a job as their chief technology officer. I declined, preferring to maintain my independence, but I did negotiate a licensing agreement for my software, one that Ryan assured me was just a formality, and that I signed without having my own lawyer review it. After all, we were family. That was 2 years ago. Since then, Campbell Realty had expanded to 3 new states, largely on the strength of their proprietary technology platform, my platform. The one that made the cover of Real Estate Technology, quarterly with Ryan's face next to it, identified as the innovative force behind the company's digital transformation. I never complained. He was my husband, and his success was supposed to be our success. But something had shifted between us in the last year. The late nights at the office became more frequent, the calls that he took in another room. The way he no longer shared details about the company's expansion plans. And now, this dinner, this carefully orchestrated family gathering from which I had been deliberately excluded. So your suspicion is that he's planning to announce he's leaving. You? Jasmine asked, pouring me a glass of wine from the bottle she'd brought with her into the private dining room. And his sister was trying to keep you from crashing the party? I nodded, taking a grateful sip. That's what it looks like. Though, why Vanessa would take such pleasure in it, I don't know. She's always treated me like something unpleasant stuck to the bottom of her designer shoes. Some people just love drama and power plays, Jasmine said, settling into the chair across from me. But what I don't understand is why you're so calm about this. If my husband was planning to blindside me with divorce at a family dinner I wasn't invited to, I'd be throwing plates. I smiled despite myself. Oh, believe me, I'm furious. But also, I hesitated, trying to find the right words. Also, relieved in a way? The past few months have been so strained, like we're both just going through the motions. If he wants out, then maybe it's for the best. Jasmine studied me over the rim of her glass. There's something else, isn't there? I hesitated, then nodded slowly. 3 weeks ago, I found something on his laptop. He left it open when he went to take a shower, and an email notification popped up from Ted Wilson. The family lawyer? Yes, the subject line was Software Ownership Transfer. I shouldn't have looked, but of course you looked, Jasmine said emphatically. Anyone would. The email mentioned finalizing the transfer of all intellectual property, rights to Campbell Realty before proceeding with the personal matter we discussed. There was an attachment, a legal document that would sign away my rights to the software I created, making it fully owned by the company. I took another sip of wine, feeling the familiar anger rising again. They were planning to take my work before Ryan left me. Jasmine's eyes widened. Tell me you didn't sign anything. I didn't. The document required my signature, but apparently they were planning to present it to me as just another company formality. Ryan even wrote in his response that he was confident he could get the signature without raising suspicions. That. Snake, Jasmine muttered. So, what did you do? I took screenshots of everything, then closed the laptop exactly as I'd found it. The next day, I called my old college roommate, who's now a software patent attorney. Within a week, I had filed all the necessary paperwork to protect my intellectual property properly. Does Ryan know? I shook my head. Not yet. I've been waiting for him to make his move. Jasmine leaned back in her chair, a slow smile spreading across her face. And now he has. With this dinner. I nodded, feeling a strange sense of calm wash over me. Yes, and I'm not going to let him or his family blindside me. So what's the plan? Jasmine asked, her eyes sparkling with anticipation. I was about to answer when a knock came at the door. Julian, the manager, entered with an apologetic expression. I'm sorry to interrupt, Ms. Rivera, but there's a situation in the main dining room that requires your attention. Jasmine frowned. What kind of situation? Mr. Campbell, the younger Mr. Campbell, is insisting on speaking with Mrs. Campbell immediately. He's becoming rather insistent. I exchanged a glance with Jasmine. Looks like Ryan's finally noticed I'm here. Shall I tell him you're unavailable? Julian asked. I considered this for a moment, then shook my head. No. Actually, I think it's time I joined the Campbell family dinner after all. I stood, smoothing down my dress. If that's all right with you, Jasmine? She grinned, rising to her feet. More than all right. This I have to see. As we followed Julian back toward the main dining room, I could feel my heart pounding. For months, I'd been preparing for this confrontation, gathering documents, securing my position. Now that the moment had arrived, I found myself strangely calm. Ryan was waiting near the hostess stand, his face a mask of barely controlled panic. When he saw me walking beside Jasmine, his expression shifted to confusion. Ellie, what are you doing here? And how do you know the owner of— Hello, Ryan. I cut him off coolly. Lovely evening for a family dinner, isn't it? His gaze darted between me and Jasmine. This isn't— We need to talk privately. Why? I asked, keeping my voice even. I thought tonight was about family announcements. Isn't that what you told me? That there would be an important announcement. At dinner? Ryan's face paled. Ellie, please, this isn't how I wanted— How you wanted to tell me you're planning to divorce me, I supplied. After you secured ownership of my software, of course. Wouldn't want to jeopardize the company's future by leaving that detail unsettled. He flinched as if I'd slapped him, his voice dropping to a harsh whisper. How did you— know? I know a lot of things, Ryan. Including the fact that your family lawyer has been preparing divorce papers for over a month. The same lawyer who drafted that intellectual property transfer you were planning to trick me into signing. Jasmine made a small sound of approval beside me, and I felt a surge of gratitude for her presence. Ryan's eyes narrowed as he noticed her reaction. This is between us, Ellie. It doesn't concern— Actually, Jasmine interrupted smoothly, as Ellie's friend and the owner of this establishment, I'd say it very much concerns me when my guests are deliberately excluded and humiliated. That wasn't my intention, Ryan protested, though his eyes told a different story. Wasn't it? I asked quietly. Then why arrange this family dinner without me? Why let your sister intercept me at the door? Why not look at me when I arrived? He had no answer for that, his gaze dropping to the floor. I think, I continued, that we should continue this conversation with the rest of your family present. After all, they're waiting to hear your big announcement, aren't they? Ryan's head snapped up. Ellie, don't, please. But I was already moving past him, heading directly for the Campbell family table. I could feel the eyes of other diners. On me, could sense Jasmine following close behind, and knew that Ryan was trailing after us, desperately trying to prevent what was about to happen. Diana Campbell saw me approaching first, her perfectly composed face tightening with displeasure. Gregory looked up from his whiskey, his expression unreadable. Mark seemed uncomfortable, while Vanessa's eyes burned with undisguised hostility. Ellie, Diana said, her voice carrying that familiar frost. This is unexpected. Apparently so, I replied, coming to a stop at their table. Though I can't imagine why, since Ryan specifically told me about tonight's family dinner. There must have been a misunderstanding, Gregory offered, though his tone suggested he knew perfectly well there was none. No misunderstanding, I said firmly. Just a deliberate exclusion. But don't worry, I'm not here to make a scene or to beg for a seat at your table. Then why are you here? Vanessa asked sharply. I smiled, feeling a strange sense of power as I stood before them. This family that had never truly accepted me, that had taken what they wanted from me and was now preparing to discard me. I'm here because I wanted to see your faces when you learned that your carefully laid plans have failed. Ryan stepped forward, panic evident in his features. Ellie, this isn't the place. It's exactly the place, I cut him off. You wanted to announce our divorce here, tonight, to your family, after making sure that the software I created, the software that has tripled your company's value, was safely under Campbell Realty control. Diana's eyes widened slightly, the only indication that my words had landed with impact. Gregory sat up straighter, his attention now fully on me. What's she talking about, Ryan? He demanded. Ryan's face had gone ashen. Dad, this is complicated. It's really not, I interjected. Your son and your family lawyer have been planning to secure my intellectual property before Ryan files for divorce. Unfortunately for all of you, I discovered this plan weeks ago. I reached into my clutch and withdrew a folded document, placing it on the table in front of Gregory. This is a copy of the software patent filing I submitted 3 weeks ago, in my name only. The proprietary system that's been driving Campbell Realty's expansion for the past 2 years, it legally belongs to me, not to your company, not to your family, to me, Ellie Matthews. The stunned silence that followed was deeply satisfying. Diana's composure cracked, her face showing real shock for perhaps the first time since I'd known her. Gregory picked up the document with shaking hands, scanning its contents with growing dismay. This isn't possible, Vanessa finally sputtered. Ryan had you sign a licensing agreement, I finished for her, which gives Campbell Realty the right to use my software, under specific terms and conditions, terms that include immediate termination of the license if the company attempts to claim ownership fraudulently. I nodded toward the paper in Gregory's hands. As your lawyer can explain, attempting to force a transfer of intellectual property under false pretenses would certainly qualify. Ryan sank into an empty chair, his face in his hands. Ellie, you don't understand what you're doing. I understand perfectly, I replied calmly. I'm protecting what's mine, something I should have done from the beginning. Gregory looked up from the document, his business instincts finally overriding his shock. What do you want? Money? A larger settlement? I laughed, genuinely amused by how predictably his mind worked. I don't want your money, Gregory. If Ryan wants a divorce, he can have one. But my software, my creation, isn't part of the bargain. You can't just pull the system from under us, he growled. It would cripple operations across 5 states. I'm aware, I said evenly. That's why I'm prepared to offer a new licensing agreement, with proper legal representation on my side this time. Diana recovered enough to rejoin the conversation, her voice tight with barely controlled fury. You planned this, All of it. No, I corrected her. Your son planned this. I simply found out and protected myself. I glanced at Ryan, who still couldn't meet my eyes. After 6 years of marriage, I finally realized that no one else was going to. This is preposterous, Vanessa declared. You can't honestly expect us to believe that you, a basic coder from nowhere, managed to outmaneuver our entire family and legal team. Jasmine, who had been silently observing until now, stepped forward. Actually, Vanessa, Ellie isn't just a basic coder. Before she created the system that's made your family millions, she was already recognized as one of the most innovative developers in real estate tech. The fact that you don't know this about your own sister-in-law says everything about how your family has always underestimated her. And who exactly are you? Diana asked coolly. Jasmine Rivera, she replied with a slight bow. Owner of this establishment and Ellie's friend from our days at MIT, where she graduated top of our class, by the way. Mark, who had remained silent throughout the exchange, finally spoke up. MIT? You never mentioned that. None of you ever asked, I said simply. A heavy silence fell over the table. The Campbell family, so accustomed to being in control, to dictating terms, suddenly found themselves without leverage. It was Ryan who finally broke the silence, his voice barely above a whisper. What happens now? I looked at my husband, soon-to-be ex-husband, and felt a complex mixture of emotions. Anger at his betrayal, disappointment in his weakness, but also, unexpectedly, pity. Now, I said softly, I walk away. My attorney will contact Ted Wilson tomorrow regarding both the divorce and the new licensing terms for my software. And what if we refuse? Gregory challenged, though the fight had left his voice. Then Campbell Realty loses access to the system that's driving your business, and you scramble to replace it while your operations collapse. I shrugged. Your choice. Diana looked at me with new eyes, not with respect exactly, but with grudging recognition. You've thought of everything, haven't you? Not everything, I admitted. I never thought my husband would try to steal my work before leaving me. That was unexpected. I turned to Ryan, who finally met my gaze. I would have given you a fair settlement, you know, if you'd just been honest about wanting out. The pain and shame in his eyes gave me no satisfaction. I'm sorry, he whispered. I nodded once, acknowledging his apology without accepting it. Goodbye, Ryan. The rest can be handled through our lawyers. As I turned to leave, Vanessa called, after me. That's it? You drop this bomb and just walk away? I paused, glancing back at the family that had never truly welcomed me, that had taken my contributions for granted while treating me as an outsider. What else is there to say? You got what you wanted. I won't be part of your family anymore. The only difference is, I'm leaving on my terms, not yours. With that, I walked away from the Campbell table for the last time, Jasmine at my side. As we crossed the restaurant, heads turning to watch our departure, I felt a weight lifting. A weight I hadn't even realized I'd been carrying for 6 years. Outside in the cool Portland evening, Jasmine linked her arm through mine. That, she said with undisguised admiration, was the most satisfying thing I've witnessed in my entire restaurant career. And I once saw a food critic get hit in the face with a soufflé. I laughed, the sound surprising me with its lightness. Thank you for backing me up in there. Are you kidding? I should be thanking you for the entertainment. Her expression softened. But seriously, Ellie, are you okay? I considered the question as we stood in the gentle drizzle, the city, lights reflecting in puddles at our feet. Was I okay? My marriage was over. My relationship with the Campbell family, such as it was, had imploded spectacularly. The future I had planned was gone. And yet, you know what? I think I am okay, I said. realizing it was true. For the first time in years, I feel like myself again. Jasmine squeezed my arm. So what's next for Ellie Matthews, software genius and generally badass woman? I smiled, looking out at the city spread before us, full of possibilities I hadn't allowed myself to consider for too long. First, a drink somewhere that isn't owned by my ex-family, I said decisively. And then I build something new, something that's entirely mine. As we walked away from Evergreen Heights, I didn't look back. I didn't need to. Everything important, my dignity, my work, my future, was coming with me. The night air felt cleansing as Jasmine and I walked away from Evergreen Heights. Portland's. Spring drizzle created halos around the streetlights, and for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe properly. You know what I can't get over? Jasmine said as we turned onto a quieter street. The look on Vanessa's face when you pulled out that patent document. I thought her eyebrows were going to disappear into her hairline. I laughed, the sound unfamiliar to my own ears. I've never seen her speechless before. It was satisfying. So, what's the real story with that software? Jasmine asked, leading me toward a small, unassuming door nestled between two storefronts. A discreet brass plaque beside it read, Ember. You never mentioned creating some revolutionary program when we caught up at Christmas. I shrugged. It didn't seem important at the time. Just another thing I was doing for the Campbell family, without recognition. Jasmine pressed her thumb to a small scanner beside the door, which clicked open to reveal a narrow staircase leading upward. Well, it sounds pretty damn important now. Come on, this place is members only, but the owner owes me a favor. We climbed the stairs and emerged into a warm, intimate space with exposed brick walls, low lighting, and comfortable seating arranged in conversation-friendly clusters. A small bar staffed by a bow-tied bartender took up one wall, while the opposite featured floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Nice, I murmured, taking in the atmosphere. Very un-Campbell. Jasmine smiled knowingly. Exactly why I brought you here. Now, drinks first, then you can fill me in on everything. 20 minutes later, settled into plush armchairs with cocktails in hand, I found myself explaining the details I'd left out at the restaurant. The software started as a side project, I explained, swirling the ice in my glass. Campbell Realty was using this archaic property management system from the early 2000s. It couldn't handle their growing portfolio, couldn't integrate with modern financial tools, and was basically held together with digital duct tape. And you offered to fix it. Ryan was complaining about it one night, how the quotes they were getting from software developers were outrageous, how his father was furious about the inefficiency. I told him I could build something better, and he laughed. The memory still stung, even now. He actually patted my head like I was a child with an adorable but impossible dream. Jasmine winced. Charming. It took 3 more conversations before he finally mentioned it to Gregory, and even then, it was presented as a maybe my wife can help situation rather than my wife is a highly qualified software engineer who can solve this problem. So, what did you create exactly? I took a sip of my drink, gathering my thoughts. It's an integrated property management platform that handles everything from tenant screening to maintenance requests to financial analytics. It uses machine learning to predict maintenance needs before they become emergencies, optimizes rental pricing based on market conditions, and automates about 70% of the tasks their property managers were doing manually. Jasmine's eyes widened. That sounds extremely valuable. It is. Before my software, Campbell Realty was managing about 200 properties with a staff of 40. Now they manage over 600 properties with the same staff, and their profit margins have increased by 38%. And let me guess, Ryan took all the credit. I nodded, a familiar bitterness rising. He became the face of Campbell Realty's digital transformation, started giving interviews about his vision for the future of property management technology, while you got a pat on the head and a "thank you, dear" from Diana at the company Christmas party. I finished my drink in one swallow, welcoming the burn at the back of my throat. And a licensing agreement that I now realize was intentionally vague about ownership rights. Jasmine signaled the bartender for another round. "But you fixed that with the patent filing." "Yes, though I wish I'd done it sooner. When I found those emails on Ryan's computer, I realized I'd been naive. I thought we were partners, but to him, to all of them, I was just a resource to be used and discarded." Our fresh drinks arrived, and Jasmine raised hers in a toast. To waking up and taking control. I clinked my glass against hers, feeling a rush of gratitude for her unwavering support. It's not just about the software, you know. It's about all of it. The way the entire Campbell family treated me like an accessory rather than a person. Diana correcting my table manners at family dinners. Gregory interrupting me whenever I tried to contribute to conversations about business or politics. Vanessa deliberately excluding me from family traditions. And Ryan letting it happen, Jasmine added softly. Exactly. I sighed, leaning back in my chair. For years I told myself it would get better. That eventually they'd see me for who I really am. That Ryan would stand up for me. But he never did. Not once. Not when Diana forgot to include my parents in the wedding rehearsal dinner. Not when Vanessa made that comment about how surprising it was that I could afford my outfit at last year's charity gala. Not when Gregory introduced me as Ryan's wife to potential investors who were literally using my software. The realization hit me anew. How much I had tolerated, how long I had diminished myself to fit into their world. You know what the worst part is? I continued, the words flowing more freely now. I actually started to believe them, started to think that maybe I wasn't good enough, smart enough, polished enough to be a real Campbell. I stopped correcting people when they assumed I was just a housewife. Stopped mentioning my MIT background. Stopped being me. Jasmine reached across the table to squeeze my hand. But you found yourself again. I nodded, feeling a strange mixture of grief and liberation. When I read those emails, when I saw in black and white how Ryan was planning to take credit for my work permanently before leaving me, something snapped. I realized I'd been living like a guest in my own life, always apologizing for taking up space. And now? Now I'm reclaiming my space. I raised my glass again, starting with my intellectual property and my self-respect. We sat in comfortable silence for a few moments, watching the city lights through the rain-streaked windows. My phone had been buzzing intermittently in my purse, but I had no interest in checking it. Whatever the Campbell family had to say could wait. So what's the next step? Jasmine finally asked. Beyond the lawyer stuff, I mean. I considered the question. In the flurry of discovering Ryan's betrayal and preparing my countermoves, I hadn't really thought beyond tonight's confrontation. I need a place to stay, for starters. I can't go back to that house. My guest apartment is yours for as long as you need it, Jasmine offered immediately. It's above the restaurant, private entrance, fully furnished. Are you sure? I don't want to impose. She waved away my concern. Please. Having you there would be doing me a favor. The place sits empty most of the time and I worry about security. Relief washed over me. Thank you. Truly. And work? Are you still at Momentum Tech? I nodded. Senior developer, though I've been thinking about making a change. The Campbell situation has taken up so much mental real estate lately that I haven't had energy for much else. Well, now that you're officially a free woman, or will be soon, maybe it's time to think bigger. Jasmine leaned forward, her eyes brightening with excitement. Have you considered starting your own company? That real estate platform you created could be adapted for other industries, couldn't it? The idea sent a small thrill through me, a spark of possibility I hadn't allowed myself to feel in years. It could. The core architecture is industry agnostic. With some modifications, it could work for hospitality management, healthcare facilities, educational institutions. See? There's your next chapter. Jasmine's enthusiasm was infectious. Ellie Matthews, CEO and tech innovator. I laughed, but not dismissively this time. Let me get through the divorce first. Speaking of which, Jasmine nodded toward my purse, which was vibrating again with another incoming call. Are you going to check that at some point? With a sigh, I retrieved my phone. 15 missed calls, 5 from Ryan, 4 from Vanessa, surprisingly, 3 from Diana, 2 from Mark, and 1 from Gregory himself, plus dozens of text messages that I couldn't bring myself to read yet. The entire Campbell clan is blowing up my phone, I said, turning it face down on the table. They can wait until tomorrow. Fair enough, though I am dying to know what they're saying. Jasmine's eyes sparkled with mischief, especially Vanessa. I can't imagine she's taking this well. Probably threatening me with the family lawyers, I mused, or trying to find a loophole in my patent filing. Just then, the phone vibrated again, a call from a number I didn't recognize. On impulse, I answered and put it on speaker. Hello, Ellie Matthews speaking. Ms. Matthews, this is Ted Wilson. The deep, professional voice of the Campbell family lawyer filled our corner of the bar, and Jasmine's eyebrows shot up in surprise. Mr. Wilson, what an unexpected pleasure. I kept my tone neutral, giving Jasmine a warning look to stay quiet. I understand there was an incident at Evergreen Heights this evening. Is that what we're calling it? An incident? I couldn't help the edge that crept into my voice. I would characterize it differently. Ted cleared his throat uncomfortably. Yes, well, regardless of terminology, I'm calling to request a meeting, tomorrow morning if possible, to discuss next steps regarding both your marital situation and the intellectual property matter. I noted how carefully he avoided mentioning the patent or the software directly, a lawyer to his core, avoiding any admissions even in a private conversation. I'll be speaking with my own attorney first thing tomorrow, I replied coolly. She'll contact you to arrange a meeting. There was a brief pause. Your attorney? Yes, Mr. Wilson. Did you think I would come alone to negotiate with the Campbell family lawyer? That would be rather unbalanced, wouldn't it? Another pause, longer this time. Of course, that's your prerogative. Is there anything else? Ted's voice took on a more conciliatory tone. Ms. Matthews, I want to be clear that my role here is to facilitate an amicable resolution. Neither the Campbell family nor I wish for this to become acrimonious. I couldn't suppress a short laugh. Mr. Wilson, your client attempted to fraudulently secure ownership of my intellectual property before blindsiding me with divorce papers. I think we're well past amicable. There may have been some miscommunication regarding the software ownership, he hedged. I assure you, if we can just sit down together. Miscommunication? Is that what we're calling premeditated intellectual property theft these days? I kept my voice level despite the anger bubbling beneath the surface. Let me be perfectly clear, Mr. Wilson. I have copies of emails between you and Ryan discussing how to trick me into signing away my rights before filing for divorce. There was no miscommunication. There was a deliberate plan to defraud me. Ted was silent for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice had lost its smooth, professional veneer. I would be very careful about making accusations of fraud, Ms. Matthews. And I would be very careful about attempting to intimidate someone who has documentary evidence of potentially unethical legal behavior, Mr. Wilson. I let that sink in before continuing. As I said, my lawyer will contact you tomorrow. Good night. I ended the call and looked up to find Jasmine staring at me with undisguised admiration. Holy shit, Ellie, she breathed. That was badass. I set the phone down, surprised to find my hand steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. It's amazing what you can do when you stop caring what other people think of you. The Campbells must be in full panic mode if they've got their lawyer calling you directly on a Friday night. They're not used to things not going their way, I said, a small smile playing at my lips. Especially not when it's someone they've always underestimated who outmaneuvers them. Jasmine raised her glass again. To underestimation, the secret weapon of smart women everywhere. I clinked my glass against hers, feeling a surge of confidence I hadn't experienced in years. 5 hours ago, I was dreading this evening. Trying to figure out what to wear to impress Diana, rehearsing safe topics of conversation that wouldn't trigger one of Vanessa's sneers, mentally preparing for another night of Ryan avoiding eye contact with me whenever his family belittled my career. And now? Now I'm planning how to build my own company and leveraging my intellectual property into a multi-million-dollar licensing agreement. I shook my head, marveling at the shift. All because they pushed me too far. Sometimes rock bottom is actually solid ground to stand on, Jasmine mused. My phone buzzed with a text, and this time I glanced down at it. Ryan. Please come home. We need to talk. This isn't what you think. I showed Jasmine the message and she rolled her eyes. Classic. This isn't what you think. As if you didn't see the literal emails planning exactly what you think. I'm not even angry anymore. I realized, setting the phone aside again. Just disappointed and ready to move on. Well, step 1 in moving on is getting your things, Jasmine pointed out. Do you want me to go with you to pack up? Strength in numbers and all that? I considered this. The thought of returning to the house I'd shared with Ryan, walking through rooms we'd decorated together, seeing the life we'd built slowly dismantled, made my stomach tighten. But it had to be done, and sooner was better than later. Tomorrow, I decided. I'll go tomorrow morning while Ryan's at his Saturday tennis game with Gregory. Less chance of a confrontation. Smart, and in the meantime, Jasmine stood, extending her hand to me. Let me show you to your new temporary home. I think you'll find it a major upgrade from Campbell Manor. We left Ember and walked the few blocks back to Evergreen Heights in comfortable silence. The restaurant was still bustling with the late dinner crowd, but Jasmine led me around to a discreet side entrance that opened onto a stairwell. Private access, she explained, punching a code into the keypad. You won't have to go through the restaurant to come and go, though you're always welcome to, of course. The stairwell led up to a spacious loft apartment with exposed brick. Walls, hardwood floors, and large windows overlooking downtown Portland. Unlike the Campbell house with its stuffy traditional decor, all chosen by Diana, of course, Jasmine's guest apartment was modern, comfortable, and immediately welcoming. This is gorgeous, I breathed, taking in the open floor plan, the well-appointed kitchen, the cozy seating area arranged around a fireplace. Are you sure you don't mind me staying here? Positive. Make yourself at home. Jasmine moved around the space, turning on lamps and adjusting the thermostat. Bedroom and bath are through there. Kitchen's fully stocked. Wi-Fi password is on the fridge. Oh, and there's a home office nook in the corner if you need to work. I set my purse down on the kitchen island, a sense of unreality washing over me. 24 hours ago, I had been a Campbell wife, dutiful and diminished, bracing myself for another evening of subtle humiliation. Now I was. What? A soon-to-be divorced tech entrepreneur with a patent and a plan? It's a lot to process. Isn't it? Jasmine said softly, reading my expression. I nodded, suddenly exhausted. It's like I've been holding my breath for years, and now I can finally exhale. But I also feel scared, she suggested. Untethered, I corrected. Like I've been defining myself in relation to the Campbells for so long that I'm not entirely sure who Ellie Matthews is on her own anymore. Jasmine smiled. That's the exciting part. You get to rediscover her. And from what I saw tonight, she's pretty formidable. After Jasmine left, promising to check in on me in the morning, I found myself drawn to the windows. From this height, Portland spread out before me in a tapestry of lights and shadows, the rain creating a soft focus effect that made everything seem slightly dreamlike. Somewhere across town, in the West Hills mansion that had never really felt like home, the Campbell family was likely still in crisis mode. Planning, strategizing, trying to figure out how to contain the situation I had created. For the first time since our wedding, I wasn't concerned with what they thought of me. My phone buzzed again. Ryan, of course. I know you're upset, but please just tell me where you are. I'm worried. Then, a moment later, Dad wants to talk. Says we can work something out about the software. Please call me. And finally, Ellie. This is going to destroy the company if we don't resolve it. Is that what you want? To ruin everything my family has built? The emotional manipulation was so transparent now that I could almost laugh. As if I owed loyalty to a family that had never accepted me, to a husband who had been planning to take my work before leaving me. Instead of responding to Ryan, I opened my contacts and called my old college roommate Naomi Chen, now one of the top intellectual property attorneys in the Pacific Northwest. Despite the late hour, she picked up on the third ring. Ellie? Is everything all right? Yes and no, I replied. Remember how you helped me file that software patent a few weeks ago and I said I'd explain the urgency later? I recall being very curious about that, yes. Well, I'm ready to tell you the whole story now, and I need your help with a divorce. Naomi's voice immediately shifted into professional mode. Tell me everything. For the next hour, I laid out the entire situation, the software I'd created, the Campbell family dynamics, Ryan's betrayal, the confrontation at Evergreen Heights, and Ted Wilson's call. Naomi listened without interruption, occasionally making a sound of disapproval or surprise. So that's where we are, I concluded. Ted wants to meet tomorrow, but I'm not doing anything without you there. Absolutely not, Naomi agreed firmly. Let me handle Wilson. I've gone up against him before. He talks a big game but folds under pressure. She paused. Ellie, I have to ask. How are you doing with all of this? Really? I considered the question, trying to sort through the tangle of emotions. Honestly, I'm angry. I'm hurt. I'm exhausted. I took a deep breath. But I'm also relieved. Like I've finally put down a weight I've been carrying for years without even realizing how heavy it was. That makes sense, Naomi said gently. From what you've described, your marriage has been emotionally draining for a long time. It has, I admitted. I just kept thinking it would get better. That Ryan would eventually stand up to his family. That they would eventually see me as more than just an interloper. I laughed humorlessly. Pretty naive, right? Not naive. Hopeful. There's a difference. Well, either way, I'm done hoping for the Campbells to change. Now I'm focusing on what I can control. My work, my future. Speaking of your work, Naomi said, her tone shifting slightly. That software of yours sounds remarkable. Have you considered its market potential beyond Campbell Realty? I smiled, recalling my earlier conversation with Jasmine. Actually, yes. I'm starting to think it could be adapted for other industries. Well, if you're serious about that, I know some people you should talk to. Angel investors who specialize in tech startups, particularly those with female founders. The idea sent a thrill of excitement through me. Let's get through the divorce first, but yes, I'd like that. Very much. Good. Now, about tomorrow's meeting with Wilson. I can be there at 10 a.m. In the meantime, don't respond to any messages from Ryan or anyone in his family. Document everything they send you, but don't engage. Got it. And Naomi, thank you. For everything. That's what friends are for, she replied warmly. Get some rest, Ellie. Tomorrow's going to be a big day. After we hung up, I found myself drawn back to the windows, gazing out at the city that suddenly seemed full of possibilities. 6 years ago, I had walked down the aisle toward Ryan Campbell, believing I was stepping into a fairy tale. Tonight, I had walked away from that illusion, and somehow it felt more like a beginning than an ending. My phone buzzed one more time. A text from Mark, Ryan's younger brother. For what it's worth, I think you're getting a raw deal. Ryan's been lying to all of us about that software for years. If you need anything, let me know. M. I stared at the message in surprise. Mark had always been the quietest of the Campbell siblings, overshadowed by Vanessa's sharp ambition and Ryan's golden boy status. We'd never been close, but he'd also never been cruel to me the way the others had. I typed a simple response. Thank you, Mark. That means more than you know. Setting my phone aside, I moved away from the window and began exploring my temporary home more thoroughly. The kitchen was indeed well stocked. Jasmine had even thought to provide coffee and breakfast essentials for the morning. The bedroom featured a comfortable-looking queen bed with plush linens and a view of the city that rivaled the one from the living room. But it was the small home office nook that drew me in most powerfully. A sleek desk faced the window, with a comfortable chair and good lighting. Perfect for working on, well, whatever came next. On impulse, I opened my laptop and navigated to the code repository where I kept the most recent version of my property management software. The familiar lines of code scrolled before me, elegant solutions to complex problems, systems I had, architected and built piece by piece over months of late nights and early mornings. This was mine. Not the Campbells, not Ryan's. Mine. And for the first time in years, so was I. The next morning dawned bright and clear, the spring rain having washed away overnight. I woke early, momentarily disoriented by the unfamiliar surroundings before memories of the previous evening came flooding back. Right. The confrontation at Evergreen Heights, the revelation of Ryan's betrayal, my escape to Jasmine's guest apartment. I checked my phone to find several more missed calls and texts from various Campbells, but nothing that required my immediate attention. Following Naomi's advice, I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I showered, dressed in the same clothes from the night before. Mental note, shopping for essentials needed to be a priority today, and made myself a strong cup of coffee. By 8 a.m., I was feeling surprisingly centered given the circumstances. A text from Jasmine. Breakfast downstairs whenever you're ready. Chef's making his famous chilaquiles. My stomach growled in response. With one last glance at my phone, still, lighting up with the Campbell family's increasing desperation, I headed downstairs to face the first day of my new life. Jasmine was waiting in the restaurant's empty dining room, a spread of food already laid out on a table by the window. Sleep okay? She asked as I joined her. Better than I expected, I admitted, helping myself to the fragrant chilaquiles. Though it's going to take some getting used to, sleeping alone again. Wine helps, Jasmine suggested with a wink. So what's the game plan for today? I outlined my schedule between bites of the delicious breakfast. Meeting Naomi at 9:30 to prep for the encounter with Ted Wilson at 10. Then, assuming Ryan sticks to his usual Saturday routine, I'll head to the house around 11 to pack some essentials while he's at tennis with Gregory. Want me to come with you? For moral support or heavy lifting? I nodded gratefully. If you can spare the time, yes. I don't think Ryan would try anything, but having a witness never hurts, Jasmine finished. Plus, I'm dying to see the famous Campbell mansion. Is it as stuffy as I imagine? Stuffier, I assured her with a smile. Diana selected every piece of furniture, every paint color, every artwork. It looks like a museum dedicated to conventional taste. Sounds dreadful. Consider me your official backup and judgment provider. As we finished breakfast, my phone rang. Naomi. Good morning, I answered. I was just telling Jasmine about our plan for today. There's been a change of plans, Naomi said, her voice tight. Ted Wilson called me at home this morning. The Campbells want to meet at their house, not my office. I frowned. Their house? Why? Apparently, Gregory Campbell doesn't want to be seen visiting a lawyer's office right now. Bad optics, he says. That sounds like Gregory, I muttered. Always concerned with appearances. I told him we'd only agree if the meeting took place on neutral ground, Naomi continued. So we've settled on the Campbell Realty corporate offices downtown. 10:30. Is that wise? Meeting on their turf? Actually, I think it works in our favor, Naomi said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. They're rattled, Ellie. Gregory Campbell doesn't change meeting locations unless he's worried about something, and the fact that he's bringing the whole family tells me they're scrambling. The whole family will be there? That's what Wilson said. Gregory, Diana, Ryan, and even Vanessa, though I don't see what role she has in this. I caught Jasmine's eye across the table. So much. For my plan to grab my things while Ryan's playing tennis. We can push that to later, Jasmine suggested. The meeting might not take long if they're as desperate as they sound. I relayed this to Naomi, who agreed. I don't anticipate this being a lengthy meeting. My goal is to establish our position clearly and set the terms for moving forward. If they're reasonable, we can make progress quickly. And if they're not reasonable, I asked, already knowing the answer. Then we walk away and prepare for a more protracted battle, Naomi replied, matter-of-factly. But let's cross that bridge if we come to it. For now, meet me in the lobby of Campbell Realty at 10:15. Wear something that makes you feel powerful. After hanging up, I looked down at my outfit from the night before. Perfectly nice, but hardly power-dressing material. I need clothes, I said to Jasmine. Something that says I'm in control and not to be trifled with. Jasmine checked her watch. We have just enough time for a quick shopping trip before your meeting. I know exactly the place. 90 minutes later, I stood in the elevator of the Campbell Realty building, dressed in a perfectly tailored charcoal pantsuit, crisp white blouse, and subtle but expensive-looking accessories, all courtesy of Jasmine's favorite boutique, which had opened early for a fashion emergency. Naomi waited in the lobby as promised, her own power suit a deep navy, her expression confident and focused. You look ready for battle, she approved, giving me a quick hug. I feel ready, I replied, surprised to find it was true. Let's do this. As the elevator carried us up to the executive floor, I found myself thinking about all the times I'd visited this building before, always as Ryan's wife, always slightly apologetic for taking up space in the Campbell domain. Today was different. Today I wasn't asking for a seat at their table, I was coming to claim what was mine. The elevator doors opened, and we stepped out into the lion's den. The Campbell Realty executive floor had always intimidated me with its polished marble floors, museum-quality artwork, and hushed atmosphere of wealth and power. Today, though, I felt different walking through these hallways. Not as Ryan's accessory, but as a force to be reckoned with. Naomi walked beside me, her presence steady and reassuring. Remember, she murmured as we approached the main conference room. You hold the leverage here. Don't let them make you forget that. I nodded, squaring my shoulders as the receptionist, who had always treated me with polite indifference on my previous visits, suddenly seemed unsure how to address me. Ms. Matthews, she stammered. They're waiting for you in the Cascade room. The fact that she knew to call me Matthews told me everything about how quickly news had spread. I thanked her with a polite smile and continued down the hallway, Naomi matching my stride. The Cascade Room was Campbell Realty's showpiece conference space, a corner room with floor-to-ceiling windows offering panoramic views of Portland and the mountains beyond. The massive table of polished walnut could seat 20, though today only 5 people occupied one end. Gregory and Diana Campbell, Ryan, Vanessa, and Ted Wilson, the family lawyer. They all looked up as we entered, their expressions a study, in controlled tension. Gregory sat at the head of the table, as always, his silver hair immaculate, his expression inscrutable. Diana beside him, her posture rigid, her face a mask of icy composure. Ryan looked like he hadn't slept, his usual confidence replaced by a haunted uncertainty. Vanessa, surprisingly, seemed the most affected, her eyes slightly puffy, as if she'd been crying. Ted Wilson rose to greet us with professional cordiality. "Ms. Matthews, Ms. Chen, thank you for agreeing to meet." Naomi returned his greeting with equal formality. "Mr. Wilson, we appreciate the accommodation on timing." As we took our seats opposite the Campbell contingent, I couldn't help but notice the stack of folders in front of Ted, clearly prepared for a lengthy negotiation. On our side, Naomi had only a slim leather portfolio and her phone. Gregory cleared his throat, taking control as he always did. "Ellie, I want to begin by saying that this situation has spiraled in a way none of us intended. What happened last night at Evergreen Heights was unfortunate." I met his gaze steadily. "Is that what we're calling it? Unfortunate?" "There were misunderstandings on all sides," he continued, as if I hadn't spoken. "But I believe we can resolve this amicably, with goodwill from everyone involved." Naomi opened her portfolio. "Before we discuss resolution, Mr. Campbell, I think we should clarify exactly what we're resolving. My client has discovered that her husband and your family lawyer were conspiring to fraudulently obtain her intellectual property before serving her with divorce papers. Would you characterize that as a misunderstanding?" Ted leaned forward, his expression darkening. "That's a serious allegation, Ms. Chen, and not an accurate representation of—" "I have the emails, Ted," I interrupted quietly. "The ones where you advised Ryan on how to secure the asset, meaning my software, before proceeding with the divorce. The ones where you suggested having me sign the transfer during a routine business meeting where I wouldn't have legal representation." The room fell silent. Diana's perfectly manicured nails tapped once against the table before she stilled them. Ryan stared at his hands. Only Vanessa seemed genuinely surprised, her gaze darting between her brother and her father. "You kept copies of those emails?" Ryan finally asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Of course she did," Vanessa snapped unexpectedly. "Did you think she was stupid?" All eyes turned to Vanessa in shock. She flushed but didn't back down. "What? We're sitting here pretending this is a misunderstanding when it's clearly not. You tried to steal her work, Ryan. At least have the guts to admit it." Diana turned to her daughter, aghast. "Vanessa, that's enough." "No, Mother, it's not enough," Vanessa retorted, a crack appearing in her usually perfect composure. "You and Dad have been covering for Ryan for years, and look where it's gotten us. Our company is about to implode because he couldn't just be honest for once in his life." I stared at Vanessa, unable to hide my astonishment. In 6 years of marriage, I had never heard her speak against her brother or parents. Gregory's face hardened. "This isn't helping, Vanessa. We're here to negotiate a resolution, not assign blame." "Actually," Naomi interjected smoothly, "understanding exactly what happened is critical to determining an appropriate resolution." She turned to Ryan. "Mr. Campbell, did you or did you not attempt to secure ownership of my client's intellectual property without her knowledge or informed consent?" All eyes turned to Ryan. He looked cornered, his gaze flicking between his. Father and Ted Wilson as if hoping for rescue. When none came, he slumped slightly in his chair. It wasn't like that, he began weakly. The software is integral to our business operations. I was just trying to ensure continuity during a difficult transition. A difficult transition, I repeated, unable to keep the edge from my voice. Is that what you call divorcing your wife after stealing her work? Diana winced visibly at my bluntness. Gregory's expression remained impassive, but a muscle twitched in his jaw. I think, Ted Wilson said carefully, that we're getting off track. The question isn't about intent, but about finding a path forward that serves everyone's interests. Naomi smiled thinly. On the contrary, Mr. Wilson, intent matters greatly, especially when we're discussing potential legal consequences. Ted's professional demeanor slipped momentarily. Legal consequences? Fraud, attempted theft of intellectual property, potentially even conspiracy, given the documentation we have. Naomi listed these calmly, as if discussing menu options. My client has been very restrained thus far, but she would be well within her rights to pursue these matters in court. The threat hung in the air. Gregory's expression darkened, Diana paled, and Ryan looked like he might be sick. Only Vanessa seemed oddly satisfied by this turn in the conversation. That won't be necessary, Gregory finally said, his voice tight. We're prepared to make a very generous offer to resolve this situation quietly. We're listening, Naomi replied, her pen poised above her notepad. Gregory nodded to Ted, who opened one of his folders and extracted a document that he slid across the table to us. A revised licensing agreement for the property management software, Ted explained. Triple the original licensing fee, guaranteed for 10 years, with explicit recognition of Ms. Matthews as the sole creator and owner of the intellectual property. Naomi glanced at the document without touching it. And regarding the divorce? Ted produced another document. A settlement agreement that we believe is more than fair. The house in the West Hills, a lump sum of $2 million, and ongoing alimony of $10,000 per month for 5 years. I couldn't help it. I laughed. The sound was startling in the tense atmosphere of the room. Something amusing, Ellie? Diana asked frostily. Yes, actually. I leaned forward, meeting her gaze directly. The fact that you think you can put a price tag on what Ryan and your family tried to do to me. That you believe I can be bought off with a house I never liked, and money I don't need. Gregory frowned, clearly unaccustomed to having his generosity questioned. That's a very substantial offer, Ellie. Many would consider it more than reasonable. I'm not many, Gregory. And what's reasonable stopped mattering the moment your son and your lawyer conspired to steal my work. What do you want then? Ryan asked, speaking up for the first time since his weak attempt at justification. Just tell us what it will take to make this go away. I studied my soon-to-be ex-husband, truly seeing him perhaps for the first time. The handsome face that had once made my heart race now seemed merely a facade, an attractive shell hiding a profound weakness of character. Make this go away, I repeated softly. That's always been your approach, hasn't it, Ryan? Find the quickest, easiest solution that lets you avoid consequences. I shook my head. But this isn't going away. Not with money, not with legal documents. Then what? He demanded, frustration edging into his voice. What do you want from us? Naomi touched my arm lightly, a gentle reminder to stay focused on our objectives. I took a deep breath, centering myself. 3 things, I said finally. First, a complete dissolution of our marriage with no alimony in either direction. I keep what's mine, you keep what's yours. Gregory nodded, seemingly relieved that my demands were starting reasonably. Second, a new licensing agreement for my software, one drafted by my lawyers, not yours. Campbell Realty can continue to use the platform, but at market rates, not the friend and family discount I originally provided. Ted Wilson made a note, his expression carefully neutral. And the third condition? I looked directly at Ryan. Public recognition of my work. A press release from Campbell Realty acknowledging that I created the software that transformed your business, not Ryan. And a correction to every article, interview, and press mention where Ryan took credit for my innovation. The room fell silent. This, I knew, was the demand they hadn't anticipated, the one that struck at the heart of the Campbell family pride. That's not practical, Gregory said after a moment. The negative publicity would what? I challenged. Force you to tell the truth? Acknowledge that a woman from a middle-class background created the technology that saved your company, not your golden boy son? Diana's nostrils flared. There's no need to be vindictive, Ellie. It's not vindication, Diana. It's recognition. Something your family has denied me since the day I married into it. Vanessa, who had been watching this exchange with unusual intensity, suddenly spoke up. She's right. All heads turned toward her in surprise. Vanessa, Gregory warned, but she continued, her voice stronger than before. No, Dad, she is right. Ryan has been taking credit for Ellie's work for years, and we've all let him. We've all known the truth, but we chose the family narrative over honesty. She looked at me, something like respect in her eyes. You deserve recognition for what you created. I stared at Vanessa, genuinely stunned by this unexpected alliance. Ryan looked betrayed, while Diana seemed simply bewildered by her daughter's defection. May I suggest, Naomi interjected smoothly, that we take a brief recess, perhaps 20 minutes for everyone to consider their positions? Ted Wilson seized on this diplomatic offer. An excellent idea. We could all use a moment to reflect. As the Campbell contingent filed out of the room, Gregory escorting Diana, whose rigid posture betrayed her agitation, followed by Ted Wilson and a dejected Ryan, Vanessa lingered behind. Can I talk to you? She asked me, an unfamiliar vulnerability in her voice. Alone? Naomi glanced at me questioningly. I nodded, curious despite myself. I'll get us some coffee, Naomi said tactfully, leaving Vanessa and me alone in the vast conference room. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence stretched between us, heavy with 6 years of mutual dislike and distrust. Why are you doing this? I finally asked, taking my side suddenly. Vanessa moved to the window, gazing out at the city below. I'm not taking your side. I'm taking the company's side. The company's? She turned back to face me, her expression more serious than I'd ever seen it. Campbell Realty has been my whole life, Ellie. Since I was a child, I've been groomed to be part of its future. I've worked here since I was 16, filing, answering phones, learning every aspect of the business. I nodded, vaguely aware of this history, but never having given it much thought. When Ryan joined the company after college, he was immediately made vice president of operations, she continued, a hint of old bitterness creeping into her tone. Despite having no experience, no particular talent for the work. Meanwhile, I had to fight for every promotion, every responsibility. Because you're a woman, I said, understanding dawning. Exactly. In my father's eyes, Ryan was always the heir apparent, the future of Campbell Realty, despite the fact that I was more committed, more capable. She shook her head. Then you came along with your software, and suddenly Ryan was a visionary tech leader, the innovative force driving our digital transformation. While you were still fighting for recognition, I guessed. Vanessa nodded, an unexpected vulnerability flashing across her features. When your software revolutionized our operations, I thought, finally, Dad would see that Ryan wasn't the business genius he believed. But instead, Ryan took credit for your work, and Dad believed him. They all did. For the first time, I saw Vanessa not as my nemesis, but as someone who had faced her own struggles within the Campbell family dynamics. So this isn't about supporting me, I clarified. It's about exposing Ryan. It's about truth, she corrected. And yes, part of me wants Ryan exposed for the fraud he is. But it's more than that. She hesitated, seeming to choose her words carefully. Our company is at a critical juncture. We're expanding into 3 new markets this year, with your software as the cornerstone of our strategy. If we lose access to that platform, or if there's a public legal battle over its ownership, Campbell Realty suffers, I finished for her. Exactly. And unlike my brother, I actually care about the company's future, not just my image within it. I studied her, trying to reconcile this pragmatic businesswoman with the snippy, judgmental sister-in-law I'd known for 6 years. Why did you always treat me like an outsider then? If you resented Ryan taking credit for my work, why not ally with me sooner? Vanessa had the grace to look slightly ashamed. That's complicated. Part of it was family loyalty, I suppose. And part of it, she sighed. Part of it was that you reminded me of what I was fighting against. A talented woman being overlooked and undervalued by the Campbell men. So you took it out on me instead of standing up to them, I observed. I'm not proud of it, she admitted. But I'm trying to do the right thing now. I considered her words, searching for hidden motivations or traps, but Vanessa's expression was more open, more genuine than I'd ever seen it. What exactly are you proposing? I asked finally. A compromise. You get full credit for the software, a press release, corrections to past interviews, everything. But we frame it as a positive revelation, not as Ryan having lied all this time. Saving face for the Campbell name, I noted. Minimizing damage to the company, she countered, which benefits you too if you're planning to license the software to us. She had a point. A public scandal would devalue the very asset I was negotiating over. And the licensing terms? I pressed. Market rate, as you requested, but with one addition, consulting fees for ongoing development and customization. No one understands the platform like you do, and we'll need your expertise as we expand. I raised an eyebrow. You want me to keep working with Campbell Realty? After everything that's happened? Not with Ryan, she clarified quickly. With me. I'm proposing a reorganization of our technology division, with myself as the new head. You would work directly with me on your terms as an external consultant. Well paid, I might add. The proposal was unexpected, but not unreasonable. From a purely business perspective, it made sense. I knew the software better than anyone, and continuing development would only increase its value and my licensing revenue. Why should I trust you? I asked bluntly. You've never been on my side before. I'm not asking you to trust me as a friend or family member, Vanessa replied pragmatically. I'm proposing a business arrangement between 2 professionals who both stand to benefit. You get recognition, substantial income, and the freedom to develop your platform further. The company retains access to essential technology and expertise. And you? A small, determined smile played at her lips. I get to prove to my father that I should have been his successor all along, not Ryan. I couldn't help but admire her strategic thinking. Vanessa was using this crisis to position herself for a power move within Campbell Realty, leveraging my situation to advance her own ambitions. It was calculating, certainly, but also impressively shrewd. I'll consider it, I said finally, but I need to discuss it with my lawyer first. Vanessa nodded, seeming to have expected nothing less. Of course, just think about it. This could be a solution that gives everyone something they want. Everyone except Ryan, I thought, but didn't say. As if reading my mind, Vanessa added softly, He really did love you, you know. In his way. His way wasn't enough, I replied simply. No, she agreed, surprising me again. It wouldn't have been enough for me either. With that, she turned and left the conference room, leaving me alone with my thoughts and a startling new perspective on the Campbell family dynamics. When Naomi returned with coffee, I quickly outlined Vanessa's proposal. Interesting, she mused, stirring cream into her cup. Very interesting. She's using you to stage a coup against her brother. While offering me a deal that actually addresses my demands, I pointed out. The question is, can I trust her to deliver? She's still a Campbell after all. Trust, but verify, Naomi advised. If we go this route, we'll build ironclad agreements with specific performance requirements and penalties for non-compliance. But honestly, Ellie, I think she's serious. This is a power play, yes, but one that recognizes your value in a way the rest of the family never has. I sipped my coffee, considering. What about my third demand? Public recognition? That's actually the easiest part to enforce, Naomi assured me. We can draft the press release ourselves, require approval rights on all communications about the software, and include specific language about corrections to previous misattributions. And the divorce? Clean break, as you requested. Given what we know about Ryan's actions, he's in no position to contest it. I nodded slowly, a plan taking shape in my mind. Then let's counteroffer. I want everything Vanessa suggested, plus one addition, a seat on the Campbell Realty Board of Directors. Naomi's eyebrows shot up. Bold move. They won't like that. Probably not, I agreed, but it ensures I have ongoing visibility into how my technology is being used and gives me a voice in the company's direction. Plus, it's the kind of public acknowledgement that can't be quietly walked back later. A slow smile spread across Naomi's face. I like it. It's aggressive but justifiable given the circumstances. She paused, studying me. You know, a year ago you would never have made a demand like this. A year ago I was still trying to be the perfect Campbell wife, I acknowledged. Turns out I'm much better at being Ellie Matthews. When the Campbell contingent returned to the conference room, they seemed to have reached some sort of consensus among themselves. Gregory took charge immediately, his tone brisk and businesslike. We've discussed your requests, Ellie, and we believe we can accommodate them with some modifications. Ted has drafted a preliminary— Actually, I interrupted, I have a counter-proposal. I nodded to Naomi, who outlined the terms we had just discussed, including the bombshell of board membership. The reaction was immediate and mixed. Ted Wilson looked alarmed, immediately launching into reasons why board membership was unprecedented and inappropriate. Diana appeared personally offended at the suggestion. Ryan seemed resigned, barely reacting at all. Gregory, however, studied me with new eyes, calculation replacing condescension. A board seat, he repeated slowly. That's quite a demand. It's appropriate given the value my technology has created for Campbell Realty, I replied evenly, and it ensures ongoing alignment between my work and the company's strategy. It's outrageous, Diana declared. The board has always been family and our closest business associates. And I created the technology that's driving your entire expansion strategy, I countered. If that doesn't qualify me as a close business associate, I don't know what would. Gregory held up a hand, silencing his wife's next protest. Let's consider this practically. What exactly would this board position entail? Standard voting rights, quarterly meeting attendance, committee participation as relevant to technology implementation. I kept my tone matter of fact, as if this were a routine business negotiation rather than a radical restructuring of Campbell family power dynamics. I'm not looking to disrupt operations, just to ensure my intellectual property continues to be properly implemented and attributed. And if we refuse? Gregory asked, his expression unreadable. I met his gaze steadily. Then we returned to our original position. I withdraw the licensing permission entirely, and Campbell Realty loses access to the platform that's currently managing your entire property portfolio. The threat hung in the air, all the more potent for being delivered calmly, without drama or anger. Vanessa, who had been silent since returning to the room, finally spoke. "I think we should accept." All eyes turned to her in surprise. "Having Ellie on the board makes sense from a business perspective," she continued, her tone carefully professional. "She's the foremost expert on the technology that's now central to our operations. Her input would be valuable as we expand into new markets." "This is a family company," Diana objected, looking betrayed by her daughter's support of my position. "It's a family company that would collapse without Ellie's software," Vanessa countered bluntly. "We need to be practical, not emotional." I watched this exchange with growing fascination. The Campbell family dynamics were shifting before my eyes, fault lines that had probably existed for years suddenly cracking open under pressure. Gregory seemed to sense it too, his shrewd gaze moving between his wife, his daughter, and his son, who remained conspicuously silent during this entire exchange. "Ryan," Gregory said finally, "you've been quiet. What's your position on this?" Ryan looked up, startled to be directly addressed. He glanced at me, then quickly away. I think Ellie deserves recognition for her work, and a board seat would guarantee that." Diana gasped softly, clearly not expecting this capitulation from her son. Ted Wilson looked pained. "Even though it would mean working alongside your ex-wife?" Gregory pressed. "Potentially for years to come?" Ryan shrugged, a gesture so unlike his usual confident demeanor that it was almost shocking. "We're already negotiating for her to continue developing the software. And honestly, Dad, after what He hesitated, then seemed to find some small reserve of integrity. "After what I tried to do, it's the least I can offer." For a moment, I almost felt sorry for him. This man I had loved, now diminished in his father's eyes, his professional reputation about to be publicly corrected. Almost. Gregory drummed his fingers on the table, his mind clearly working through scenarios and implications. Finally, he nodded once, decisively. "A non-voting advisory board position," he offered, "with full participation rights, but without formal voting power. Renewable annually based on your continued involvement with the software development." I glanced at Naomi, who gave a slight nod. This was a reasonable compromise, one that accomplished my core goal while allowing Gregory to save face. With an option to convert to a voting position after 2 years of successful collaboration, I countered, unwilling to completely surrender the leverage. Gregory's lips twitched, almost a smile. "Negotiating like a true Campbell," he observed. "No," I corrected firmly. "Negotiating like Ellie Matthews." After a moment's consideration, he extended his hand across the table. "We have a deal, Ms. Matthews." I shook his hand, feeling a strange sense of closure. In this gesture, Campbell was acknowledging me not as Ryan's wife, not as a tolerated addition to the family, but as a business person in my own right, someone worthy of respect and recognition. The next hour was spent outlining terms in detail, with Naomi and Ted Wilson taking extensive notes for the formal agreements to follow. Diana remained frosty but resigned, occasionally offering a pointed question or comment. Ryan said little, seeming to have retreated into himself. Vanessa, surprisingly, contributed constructively throughout, often suggesting practical compromises when disagreements arose. By the time we concluded, the basic framework was established, a clean divorce, with no ongoing financial entanglements between Ryan and me. A market-rate licensing agreement for my software with consulting fees for continued development. A press release and public correction of previous misattributions. And a non-voting board position with a pathway to full membership. As the meeting wound down, Ted Wilson gathered his papers. "I'll have draft agreements to Ms. Chen by Monday," he promised, his professional demeanor firmly back in place despite the unusual circumstances. Gregory stood, signaling the end of negotiations. Ellie, despite the difficult circumstances, I want you to know that I respect how you've handled this situation. You've conducted yourself with dignity and business acumen. Coming from Gregory Campbell, this was high praise indeed. I nodded, accepting the compliment without commenting on the irony that it had taken me leaving the family to earn his respect. As everyone began to file out, Ryan lingered behind. "Ellie," he said softly, "can I have a moment?" Naomi raised an eyebrow at me in silent question. I nodded, indicating I was comfortable speaking with him briefly. When the room had emptied, leaving just the two of us, Ryan seemed at a loss for words. He stood awkwardly, hands in his pockets, looking more like the uncertain young man I'd met at that tech conference than the polished Campbell heir he'd become. "I'm sorry," he finally said. "That's inadequate, I know, but I am sorry for everything." I studied him, searching for the man I had fallen in love with, the man I had believed in for so many years. "Why, Ryan? Why not just ask for a divorce honestly? Why try to take my work?" He sighed, running a hand through his hair, a nervous gesture I remembered from our early days together. "I was scared," he admitted. "Scared of disappointing my father, scared of losing the reputation I'd built, scared of starting over without you. So instead of facing those fears, you decided to betray me completely," I observed, my tone more weary than angry now. "It sounds terrible when you put it like that." "It was terrible, Ryan." He nodded, accepting this truth. "I know, I got caught up in this image of myself that wasn't real. The successful Campbell son, the tech innovator, the perfect husband. None of it was real, but I couldn't bear to let it go." There was something almost pitiful in his honesty now, too late to save our marriage, but perhaps enough to let me leave without the bitter taste of hatred. "For what it's worth," he continued hesitantly, "I really did love you. That part wasn't fake." "Maybe," I acknowledged, "but love without respect, without honesty. That's not enough, Ryan. It never was." He nodded, accepting this truth as well. "I know that now." He hesitated, then added, "You're going to be amazing on the board, you know. Probably run circles around all of us." Despite everything, I felt a small smile tug at my lips. "Probably." He returned the smile, tentative, sad, but genuine. "Goodbye, Ellie. Goodbye, Ryan." As he walked out of the conference room, I felt a weight lifting, the final threads of our relationship severing, not with drama or rage, but with a quiet acknowledgement of what had been lost and what would never be regained. I turned to the windows, gazing out at Portland spread below me. In the space of 24 hours, my entire life had been upended. My marriage ended, my professional identity reclaimed, my future suddenly wide open with possibilities I hadn't dared consider before. There would be paperwork and lawyers, press releases and board meetings. There would be awkward moments and difficult conversations. But standing there, looking out at the city I had made my home, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. The exhilarating freedom of being exactly who I was meant to be, Ellie Matthews on her own terms at last. When Naomi returned a few minutes later, she found me still at the window, a smile playing at my lips. "You okay?" she asked, concern in her voice. "Better than okay," I replied, turning to face her. "I think I'm finally free." The spring sunlight streamed through the windows of Jasmine's guest apartment as I poured myself another cup of coffee. 3 days had passed since the negotiation at Campbell Realty, and my life had taken on a surreal quality, as if I were living in a parallel universe where everything looked the same but operated by entirely different rules. "So they actually agreed to everything?" Jasmine asked, perched on a bar stool at the kitchen island. She'd come up to check on me and ended up staying for breakfast, fascinated by the details of my unexpected victory. Almost everything, I clarified, sliding a plate of fresh fruit toward her. Advisory board position with a path to voting rights after 2 years, public recognition for my software, market rate licensing fees plus consulting, and a clean divorce with no lingering financial ties. Jasmine whistled low. From family. Outcast to board member in 1 weekend. That's quite a reversal. It doesn't feel real yet, I admitted, leaning against the counter. I keep waiting for Gregory to call and say he's changed his mind, or for some loophole to appear in the agreements. Have you heard from Ryan? I shook my head. Not since our conversation after the meeting. I think he's lying low, probably licking his wounds. And Vanessa? Still your unexpected ally? A small smile crossed my lips. Actually, yes. She sent over some internal documents about the company's expansion plans, background for my first advisory session next week. Very professional, very thorough. Huh. Jasmine looked thoughtful. People really can surprise you. Sometimes, I agreed, though I remained cautious about Vanessa's apparent transformation. One crisis-driven alliance didn't erase 6 years of hostility. My phone chimed with an incoming email. I glanced at it and straightened. It's from Ted Wilson. Draft agreements attached. Jasmine leaned forward eagerly. Open it. Let's see. If they're trying to slip in any sneaky clauses. I opened the attachments, scanning quickly through the legal language. Despite my lingering distrust, everything seemed to match what we had negotiated. The divorce agreement was straightforward, the licensing terms robust, and the board position clearly defined with the pathway to voting rights explicitly outlined. Looks legitimate, I said, surprised despite myself. Send it to Naomi right away, Jasmine advised. Let her do the fine-tooth comb review before you get too comfortable. I forwarded the documents immediately, then set my phone down with a sigh. You know what's strange? After fighting so hard for all of this, I'm not entirely sure what to do next. Jasmine looked at me curiously. What do you mean? You've got the board position, the software recognition, your freedom from the Campbell family drama? Exactly. For 6 years, so much of my identity was wrapped up in being Ryan's wife, in trying to fit into the Campbell world. Even my resistance to them defined me in some way. I traced the rim of my coffee cup absently. Now I'm just me, and I'm not entirely sure who that is anymore. That's the most exciting part, Jasmine said, her eyes bright with enthusiasm. You get to rediscover yourself, rebuild your life on your own terms. My phone rang, interrupting our conversation. Naomi's name flashed on the screen. That was fast, I commented, answering the call. I just forwarded you the documents. I haven't looked at them yet, Naomi replied, her tone uncharacteristically tense. Ellie, have you seen the morning business news? No, why? Campbell. Realty just announced a major reorganization. Gregory Campbell is stepping down as CEO, effective immediately. I nearly dropped my phone. What? Who's taking over? That's where it gets interesting. Not Ryan, as everyone expected. Vanessa Campbell has been named interim CEO, with the board set to confirm her permanent appointment next month. Jasmine, seeing my expression, mouthed, "What's happening?" I put the phone on speaker so she could hear. There's more, Naomi continued. The press release specifically mentions the company's commitment to technological innovation, with a special acknowledgement of your software platform as the cornerstone of Campbell Realty's market expansion strategy. It names you directly as the creator and notes your new advisory role on the board. I sat down heavily on a bar stool. They're moving faster than we agreed. The announcement about my role wasn't supposed to happen until after the agreements were signed. Exactly. Something's accelerated their timeline. Naomi sounded thoughtful. This feels like Vanessa consolidating power quickly, using your situation as leverage against Ryan. But why would Gregory step down so suddenly? I wondered aloud. That's unclear from the announcement. It cites personal reasons and a desire to focus on strategic advisory roles, but the timing is suspicious. Jasmine, who had been listening intently, suddenly snapped her fingers. Check social media. If something bigger is happening, it'll be there before the official news. I pulled up Twitter on my phone while Naomi stayed on the line. It took only seconds to find what we were looking for. The hashtag #Campbell scandal was trending locally. Oh, I breathed, scrolling through posts. Oh, wow. What is it? Naomi asked urgently. Someone leaked emails. Internal Campbell Realty Communications. I continued reading, my heart racing. Not just the ones about my software. There are emails about Gregory and Ryan systematically inflating property valuations to secure larger loans, backdating documents to avoid regulatory scrutiny, even discussions about bribing building inspectors. That would explain the sudden leadership change, Naomi said grimly. They're trying to get ahead of a potential legal firestorm. And using Vanessa as the clean face of the company's future, I added, the pieces falling into place. She mentioned being positioned for a power move, but I had no idea it would happen this fast or be this dramatic. The question is, Jasmine interjected, who leaked the emails? We all fell silent, considering the implications. Finally, Naomi spoke. Ellie, this changes things. If Campbell Realty is facing potential legal troubles, their assets, including your software license, could be frozen or compromised. What should I do? I asked, my mind racing. First, don't sign anything yet. I'll review these agreements with this new information in mind. Naomi's voice turned cautious. And Ellie? Be careful. This situation just got much more complicated. After hanging up, I sat in stunned silence, trying to process this unexpected turn of events. Jasmine watched me with concern. You okay? I think so, I replied slowly. Just processing. Yesterday, I was negotiating for professional recognition. Today, I'm potentially entangled in a corporate scandal. You don't think they'll try to implicate you somehow, do you? Jasmine asked worriedly. I shook my head. I never had access to their financial operations or regulatory filings. My software managed properties, not corporate accounting. I paused, considering. Though I suppose someone desperate enough might try to claim the software was somehow involved in the valuation inflation. All the more reason to tread carefully, Jasmine advised. Maybe lie low for a few days while this plays out? But even as she suggested it, my phone lit up with an incoming call from a number I didn't recognize. Against my better judgment, I answered. Ellie Matthews. Ms. Matthews, this is Jessica Winters from the Portland Business Journal. We're covering the Breaking Campbell Realty story and would love to get your comment, given your newly announced role with the company and your connection to the software platform at the center of their operations. I froze, momentarily at a loss for words. I'm sorry, but I have no comment at this time. Sources tell us you're Ryan Campbell's wife, but were recently excluded from a family dinner where divorce plans were to be discussed. Is this connected to the current leadership shakeup? My heart pounded. How did they know about the dinner? As I said, I have no comment. Please respect my privacy. I ended the call quickly, only for the phone to immediately ring again, another unfamiliar number. I declined it, but notifications of voicemails and text messages from various media outlets began flooding in. How did they get my number? I asked, bewildered. Jasmine's expression darkened. Someone gave it to them. Someone who wants to make sure you're pulled into this story. Ryan, I suggested. Or Diana, Jasmine countered. She never struck me as the type to go down without taking others with her. My phone continued its relentless buzzing. I switched it to silent mode, trying to think clearly through the rising panic. What do I do? I can't hide out here forever, but I can't go back to the house either. It'll be swarming with reporters if they've connected me to Ryan. First, breathe, Jasmine instructed calmly. Second, call Naomi back. You need legal advice more than ever now. I nodded, grateful for her steady presence. While I called Naomi, Jasmine moved around the apartment, closing blinds and checking that the door was securely locked. Naomi answered immediately. I was just about to call you. The situation's developing rapidly. Have reporters contacted you? Yet? Yes? How did you know? Because they've contacted me too, asking for comment from Ellie Matthews' attorney. Your connection to this story is already public, she sighed. I've been reviewing the draft agreements and the news reports. Ellie, I think we need to meet in person, as soon as possible. I'm at Jasmine's guest apartment above Evergreen Heights, I told her. But I'm worried about being seen coming and going now that reporters are sniffing around. I'll come to you, Naomi decided. The restaurant has a back entrance, I assume. Yes, I'll have Jasmine meet you there. After arranging the details, I hung up and sank onto the couch, my mind whirling. In the span of an hour, my careful negotiations with the Campbell family had been completely overshadowed by revelations of potentially criminal business practices. My victory had morphed into a potential liability. Naomi's on her way, I told Jasmine. She thinks we need to rethink our strategy completely. Smart woman, Jasmine approved. In the meantime, let me get you something stronger than coffee. I think this qualifies as a legitimate reason for day drinking. She disappeared downstairs, returning 15 minutes later with a bottle of expensive whiskey and 2 glasses. Medicinal purposes, she explained with a wry smile. I accepted a small pour gratefully, the warmth of the liquor helping to steady my nerves. I keep thinking about the timing of all this, I mused. The email leak, Gregory stepping down, Vanessa taking over. It's all happening so fast. Almost like it was planned, Jasmine suggested, settling beside me on the couch. But by whom? And why now? I stared into my glass, trying to piece together the puzzle. The only person who benefits directly is Vanessa, but these leaked emails could potentially destroy the company she's now running. Unless she's positioning herself as the reformer, Jasmine pointed out. The clean Campbell who's going to right the family's wrongs. The idea had merit. Vanessa had always been ambitious, always felt overlooked in favor of Ryan. What better way to seize control than to expose her father and brother's misdeeds while presenting herself as the ethical alternative? But something about that theory didn't quite fit. If Vanessa leaked the emails, why include me in the press release about her promotion? Why draw attention to our connection right as the scandal breaks? Jasmine frowned, equally puzzled. That is strange. Almost like someone wants to create the impression that we're aligned, I finished, a chill running through me despite the whiskey's warmth. That I'm part of whatever is happening at Campbell Realty. A knock at the door interrupted our speculation. Jasmine checked the peephole before opening it to admit Naomi, who looked as polished as ever despite the urgency of the situation. She carried her briefcase and a stack of newspapers, which she promptly laid out on the coffee table. You've made the front page, she announced without preamble, pointing to the headline of the Oregonian, Campbell Realty Shakeup, Family Drama and Financial Questions. Below it was a photo of the Campbell Realty building, with smaller inset photos of Gregory, Ryan, Vanessa, and, to my dismay, me. Where did they even get my picture? I asked, horrified. Your company website, probably, Naomi suggested. Or social media. It doesn't matter. What matters is that you're being publicly linked to this situation in a way that could be problematic. She pulled out her tablet and opened a document. I've been reviewing the draft agreements Ted Wilson sent over. On the surface, they match what we negotiated. But in light of these new revelations, there are concerning implications. Such as, I prompted, the board position for one. If Campbell Realty comes under investigation for financial improprieties, every board member, even a non-voting advisory one, could be subject to questioning, depositions, maybe even legal liability. My stomach dropped, but I had nothing to do with their financial practices. I know that, but proving it could become a major distraction and expense. Naomi flipped through more pages on her tablet. And then there's the software licensing agreement. It's structured as a percentage of Campbell Realty's property management revenue. Which means if their business suffers from this scandal, I began. Your licensing income would be directly impacted, Naomi confirmed. And worse, if investigations reveal that your software was used in any way to facilitate improper valuations or document handling, it could create guilt by association, even if you had no knowledge or involvement. I stood up, too agitated to remain seated. So what are you saying? That I should walk away from everything we negotiated? Just let them keep using my software without recognition or compensation? Not at all, Naomi said firmly. I'm saying we need to restructure our approach entirely. Instead of tying your future to Campbell Realty, we need to separate you from them as cleanly as possible while still protecting your intellectual property rights. Jasmine, who had been listening intently, spoke up. Could she revoke their license completely? Force them to stop using her? Software? Naomi shook her head. Not without a protracted legal battle. And given the current situation, Campbell Realty might argue that suddenly pulling their property management system would constitute business sabotage. So I'm trapped, I said flatly. Damned if I stay connected to them, damned if I try to break free. Not trapped, Naomi corrected. Just facing a more complex challenge than we anticipated. She pulled out a legal pad and pen. Let's think strategically. What's your ideal outcome here, Ellie? I paced the length of the apartment, organizing my thoughts. I want recognition for my work. I want fair compensation for the use of my software. I want a clean divorce from Ryan. And, I added with growing conviction, I want to be completely disassociated from any Campbell Realty scandal or wrongdoing. Naomi nodded, making notes. Good. Clear objectives. Now, let's consider our leverage. What do you have that the Campbells need right now? My software, I replied immediately. Without it, their property management operations would collapse, especially during a leadership transition. And you have moral high ground, Jasmine added. You're the talented developer whose work was appropriated by her husband's family, who then tried to exclude you. It's a sympathetic narrative. Plus, you have evidence of their attempt to fraudulently obtain your intellectual property, Naomi reminded me. That gives you additional legal leverage, separate from the other issues they're facing. I stopped pacing, an idea beginning to form. What if, instead of fighting this connection to Campbell Realty in the press, I controlled the narrative myself? Naomi looked up sharply. What do you mean? What if I issued my own statement? Not about their potential financial improprieties. I know nothing about those. But about my software, my relationship with the company, and my path forward? Jasmine snapped her fingers, catching on. You could position yourself as the independent developer who created innovative technology that Campbell Realty adopted, rather than as Ryan's wife or a Campbell insider. Exactly, I said, feeling more certain with each passing moment. I establish my separate professional identity, acknowledge my limited advisory role while distancing myself from operational decisions, and make it clear that my primary focus is on continuing to develop my software for broader applications beyond just Campbell Realty. Naomi tapped her pen thoughtfully against her legal pad. It could work. A preemptive narrative that defines your relationship to Campbell Realty on your terms before others can define it for you. She paused. But timing would be crucial, and we'd need to carefully review every word to ensure you don't inadvertently create legal exposure. We should also reconsider the board position, I added, thinking aloud. Maybe convert it to a technology advisory role instead, more limited in scope, focused specifically on the software implementation, with no connection to financial or operational decisions. And the licensing agreement should be restructured, Naomi suggested. Perhaps a flat fee rather than a percentage of revenue, to insulate you from any downturn in their business. As we continued brainstorming, my phone lit up with an incoming call. Vanessa Campbell. I showed the screen to Naomi and Jasmine. Answer it, Naomi advised, but put it on speaker so we can hear. I took a deep breath and accepted the call. Vanessa. Ellie. Her voice sounded strained, lacking its usual sharp confidence. I assume you've seen the news. It's been hard to miss, I replied neutrally. Congratulations on your promotion. A short, humorless laugh. Thanks. Not exactly how I planned to become CEO, but here we are. Why are you calling, Vanessa? She hesitated, uncharacteristically uncertain. We need to talk. In person. There are complications that have arisen. I exchanged glances with Naomi, who nodded cautiously. What kind of complications? The kind I don't want to discuss over the phone. Vanessa's voice dropped lower. Look, I know how this looks. The timing of everything. Your name being included in the press release right as this scandal breaks. But I need you to know that wasn't my doing. Then whose was it? I challenged. That's part of what I want to discuss. Can we meet? Just you and me, no lawyers. When I didn't immediately respond, she added, Please, Ellie. This affects both of us. Naomi was shaking her head emphatically, mouthing no repeatedly. Jasmine looked equally skeptical. I don't think that's a good idea, Vanessa, I said carefully. Given the circumstances, any discussion should include our respective legal counsel. Fine, she conceded quickly. Too quickly. Bring your lawyer. I'll bring Ted. Name the place and time. Another warning bell sounded in my mind. Vanessa. Campbell didn't capitulate easily, and she certainly didn't sound desperate. Something wasn't right. I'll need to consult my schedule and get back to you, I hedged. Don't wait too long, she advised, an edge creeping back into her voice. Things are moving quickly and we both have interests to protect. After she hung up, I looked to Naomi and Jasmine for their reactions. Trap, Jasmine declared immediately. She's trying to create a record of your involvement or complicity in something. I agree, Naomi said grimly. The request for an informal meeting without lawyers, followed by too quick acceptance of lawyers being present. She's desperate to meet with you for some reason, and I doubt it's to protect your interests. I sank back onto the couch, feeling the weight of these complications pressing down on me. What is she up to? And why drag me into whatever's happening at Campbell Realty? Because you're valuable to her somehow, Naomi reasoned, either as an ally or as a scapegoat. The three of us sat in troubled silence, the newspapers on the coffee table a stark reminder of how quickly my private struggle had become public fodder. Finally, Jasmine spoke up. You know, there's another angle we haven't considered. What? If the email leak wasn't Vanessa's doing at all? What if someone else is orchestrating this entire situation? I frowned. Like who? Ryan, maybe? Or Gregory? Or even someone outside the family who has a grudge against Campbell Realty. It was a disturbing thought, but not implausible. The Campbell family had accumulated their share of enemies over the years. Competitors they'd outmaneuvered, partners they'd squeezed, employees they'd mistreated. Regardless of who's behind it, Naomi said pragmatically, our priority has to be protecting Ellie, and I think that starts with issuing a clear, carefully worded statement that establishes her independent professional identity and limited connection to Campbell Realty's operations. I nodded, resolve strengthening within me. Let's draft it now, and while we're at it, let's prepare a counter-proposal to the agreements, one that limits my exposure to their potential legal troubles. For the next several hours, the three of us worked intensely. Naomi drafting and redrafting legal language, Jasmine providing strategic communications advice from her years in the restaurant business, and me contributing technical details about my software and its implementation at Campbell Realty. By late afternoon, we had prepared 3 key documents: a public statement clarifying my role as the developer of the property management software, and my limited advisory relationship with Campbell Realty, a revised licensing agreement that would provide a flat fee rather than revenue-based compensation, and a completely restructured role that would replace the board position with a technical consulting arrangement focused solely on software implementation. As we reviewed our work, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I opened it warily. "Ellie, it's Mark Campbell. Need to talk. Important information about the email leak. Not what you think. Call me?" I showed the message to Naomi and Jasmine. "Another Campbell trying to arrange a private conversation," Jasmine noted skeptically. "Suspicious timing." "Though Mark has been the least hostile of the family," I pointed out. "He even texted me support after the dinner fiasco." "Still, proceed with caution," Naomi advised. "If you want to hear what he has to say, do it with witnesses present or at least record the conversation." I considered for a moment, then typed a response. "Can't talk now. If you have information, put it in writing." The reply came quickly. "Not safe in writing. Can meet at Evergreen Heights. Public place, just 15 minutes." I looked up at Jasmine. "Would you be comfortable with Mark coming here? Not to the apartment, but to the restaurant? We could meet in one of the private dining rooms with you nearby." Jasmine hesitated only briefly before nodding. "We can set it up so that I can see and hear everything without being obvious about it. If he tries anything shady, I'll be right there." With that plan in place, I confirmed the meeting with Mark for 6 p.m., after the dinner service began but before the evening rush, when Jasmine could oversee things while still managing her restaurant. "I should get back to my office and start filing these revisions," Naomi said, gathering her papers. "Are you sure you want to meet with Mark without me present?" "I'll just be listening to what he has to say," I assured her. "No agreements, no commitments, nothing in writing. And Jasmine will be watching the entire time." Naomi seemed reluctant, but eventually agreed. "Call me immediately afterward. And remember, anything he tells you could be calculated to manipulate the situation." After Naomi left, Jasmine and I spent the next hour preparing for Mark's arrival. She arranged for a private dining room with an adjacent service area where she could monitor the conversation unobtrusively. I changed into fresh clothes that Jasmine had picked up for me earlier, professional but casual, giving nothing away about my mental state or intentions. At precisely 6 p.m., Mark Campbell arrived at Evergreen Heights. Unlike the rest of his family, who favored formal business attire regardless of the occasion, Mark was dressed in jeans and a simple button-down shirt. His expression was tense, his eyes constantly scanning the restaurant as Jasmine personally escorted him to the private dining room. I was already seated when he entered, positioned so that I could see both him and the door clearly. He took the seat across from me, seeming almost relieved to find me alone. "Thank you for meeting me," he began, his voice low. "I know you have every reason to distrust anyone with the last name Campbell right now." "Why are you here, Mark?" I asked directly. "What information do you have about the email leak?" He leaned forward, his expression earnest. "It wasn't Vanessa. She's as blindsided by this as anyone. And it wasn't Ryan or my father either, though they're the ones most damaged by it." "Then who?" Mark took a deep breath. "Diana. My mother. Of all the possibilities we had discussed, this was one I hadn't seriously considered. Diana Campbell, with her rigid adherence to propriety and family loyalty, seemed the least likely to publicly expose Campbell Realty's dirty laundry. "That doesn't make sense," I said, voicing my doubt. "Why would Diana do anything that could harm the family's reputation or business?" Mark's laugh was bitter. because in her mind, she's saving both. You have to understand my mother, Ellie. She's spent her entire life cultivating the perfect image of the Campbell family: successful, respected, untouchable. When she discovered what my father and Ryan had been doing with the property valuations, she was furious, not because it was wrong, but because they were sloppy enough to leave an evidence trail. I processed this, still skeptical. Even if that's true, exposing them publicly only damages that perfect image she's worked so hard to maintain. Not if she controls the narrative, Mark countered. The emails she leaked were carefully selected. They implicate Ryan and my father while leaving her and Vanessa untouched. The timing, right after your confrontation at the restaurant, right as you were negotiating for recognition of your software, it creates a perfect scenario where the corrupt old guard is removed and replaced with fresh leadership. With Vanessa as the face of that fresh leadership, I noted, beginning to see the pattern. Mark nodded. Exactly. Mother has always favored Vanessa, always believed she should be running the company instead of Ryan. This was her way of ensuring that happened while simultaneously punishing my father for years of indiscretions that she's tolerated silently. Indiscretions? I repeated, raising an eyebrow. Mark shrugged. Let's just say my father's loyalty to his marriage vows has been as flexible as his adherence to financial regulations. This new information cast the Campbell family dynamics in an entirely different light. Rather than Vanessa orchestrating a power grab, it seemed Diana had been the puppet master all along, using the email leak to reshape the company leadership according to her preferences. Why are you telling me this, Mark? What do you hope to gain? His expression turned serious. I'm telling you because you're being set up, Ellie. The press release naming you, the sudden inclusion of your software's importance to the company, that was Diana's doing too. She's creating a narrative where you and Vanessa are aligned, where your technology is integral to the company's future. To what end? I asked, though I was beginning to suspect the answer. If things go wrong, if investigations dig deeper, if more damaging information comes to light, you become the perfect scapegoat. The outsider who created the technology that enabled improper practices, who was conveniently brought into the company leadership just as the scandal broke. Mark's eyes held genuine concern. My mother plays a long game, Ellie. She's positioning you as either an asset or a liability, depending on how things unfold. I sat back, absorbing this revelation. It explained Vanessa's desperate call earlier, her insistence on meeting. She must have realized what her mother had done and was trying to either warn me or ensure I didn't undermine the narrative Diana had constructed. I appreciate the information, I said carefully, still not entirely convinced of Mark's motives. But why would you risk crossing your mother to warn me? Mark smiled ruefully. Let's just say I have personal reasons for wanting to see Diana's machinations fail for once. And professional ones too. I've been developing my own software for commercial property analysis, and I've admired your work from afar. Developers should stick together against corporate exploitation, family or not. Before I could respond, the door to the private dining room opened, and Jasmine appeared with a deliberately casual air. Everything okay in here? Can I get you both something to drink? Mark understood the interruption for what it was, a check on my safety and comfort. Actually, I was just finishing, he said, standing. Thank you for meeting me, Ellie. I hope the information helps you protect yourself. As he turned to leave, I called after him. Mark, how do I know this isn't just another Campbell manipulation? He paused at the door, his expression thoughtful. You don't. But ask yourself this. Who benefits from you knowing what I just told you? Not my mother, not Vanessa, not Ryan or my father. He shrugged. Sometimes information is just information. What you do with it is up to you. With that, he left, leaving me with yet another puzzle piece in the increasingly complex picture of the Campbell family's internal power struggles. Jasmine slid into the seat Mark had vacated, her expression concerned. I heard everything. Do you believe him? I considered the question carefully. I'm not sure. But his explanation fits the facts better than our other theories. And if he's right about Diana positioning me as a potential scapegoat, then your strategy of issuing a clear, independent statement becomes even more important, Jasmine. Finished for me. I nodded, a new sense of urgency propelling me to action. I need to call Naomi right away. If Diana Campbell is really behind all of this, we need to move faster than we planned. As I reached for my phone, I realized that the situation had evolved far beyond my original goal of simple recognition for my work. I was now entangled in a complex web of family betrayal, corporate intrigue, and potential legal jeopardy, all orchestrated by a woman who had spent years treating me with barely disguised disdain. The irony wasn't lost on me. Diana Campbell had always seen me as beneath her family's notice, an inconvenient addition to their dynasty. Now it seemed she finally saw me as significant, but only as a pawn in her larger game of power and control. Well, I thought with newfound determination, she was about to discover that this particular pawn had learned to play the game for herself. 3 months later, I stood in my new downtown office, gazing out at the Portland skyline. The view wasn't unlike the one from the Campbell Realty conference room, but everything else had changed. The nameplate on my desk read, Ellie Matthews CEO, a title I was still getting used to. Matthews Property Tech had launched 6 weeks ago with impressive seed funding and 3 major clients already signed. My property management software, now expanded and rebranded as Property Flow, was gaining industry recognition daily. The Campbell scandal had eventually settled into a familiar business narrative. The patriarch and heir apparent stepped down amid financial irregularities, while a new leadership team implemented reforms. Vanessa remained CEO, having successfully distanced herself from her father's and brother's actions. Whether Diana's machinations had succeeded depended on your perspective. She'd gotten her daughter into the top position, but at the cost of the family's pristine reputation. As for me, my public statement, clarifying my role as software developer and my limited connection to Campbell Realty's operations, had effectively shielded me from the worst of the fallout. The licensing agreement Naomi negotiated had provided the capital I needed to launch my own company while legally separating my technology from any impropriety. Ryan and I finalized our divorce with minimal drama, both of us eager to close that chapter. Last I heard, he'd moved to Seattle for a fresh start, though industry rumors suggested he was struggling to rebuild his professional reputation. Jasmine had become both friend and informal advisor, her restaurant industry experience surprisingly applicable to my tech startup challenges. And Mark Campbell, to everyone's surprise, had joined my advisory board, bringing valuable commercial real estate insights that helped refine my software's analytical capabilities. Sometimes I still marveled at how completely my life had transformed in just a few months. From overlooked wife to respected CEO. From someone fighting for basic recognition to someone making headlines for innovation. The journey hadn't been easy or straightforward, but standing in my office, watching the sunset paint the city gold, I knew with absolute certainty that I'd found my true place at last, not as an accessory to someone else's story, but as the author of my own. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.